long agenda. I think we should begin. And as is our custom, we'll start with 72 seconds silence. Remember those who lost their lives in this wonderful tragedy. And please turn off your phones or your phone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe there are any apologies for absence. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? On the minutes of the previous meeting, can I sign them as a true and accurate record? Really, thank you. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is our annual resilience report. As you'll probably remember, we committed to bringing the annual report to the leadership team, and this report obviously looks back on what progress we've made in 2024. And I think it's true to say that I can't overestimate the importance of the resilience work to this council. It cannot be overstated. And over the last 8 years, I think it's true to say that we've developed one of the best resilience networks function in London. And over the last year, in fact, we've been asked to talk at various resilience events. And Kim in February was in Parliament to give evidence from the Housing, Communities and Local Government Select Committee about resilience in the context of the government response to the Grenfell inquiry. And Maxine, Bow and Pinnakin have presented to the Pan London meetings on resilience. But you'll see in this report, although we're celebrating a great deal of progress, that there is always extra that we can do. And in this report, you really highlight how we're going back to improve. And some of it is just, it's job descriptions, isn't it? It's all the minutiae. It's job descriptions, it's about recruitment, it's about interviews, it's about inductions, it's about performance reviews. It's just about embedding into everybody in the council that resilience is everybody's job, and that they need to know that. And I think the second thing is also embedding the role of the noise and nuisance scheme, because previously, you'll remember, we've always said, well, it's all very well, but you know, who's going to be first on the scene? Because if officers live a long way away, who's going to be there? And you're trying to say, well, the noise and nuisance people are on the ground, so they're quite good people to use as sort of first people to get to an incident. And finally, it's important to mention the Grenfell inquiry and the recommendations within it for resilience. And just to remind you all, we've accepted them in full, and we're creating action plans to address any gaps. And the team are lobbying regional and national partners to do likewise. And perhaps, Philip, you might just pick up me there and say what we do.
Yes, so the report contains some of the work we do around Grenfell recommendations. So some of it is around improving our exercising, ramping up our training, and improving our training offer, strengthening our emergency rotor. We probably have one of the biggest emergency rotors in London. We've got 250 staff who the rotor, and there's it's constant, relentless training exercise level through that with the staff. And some of that's external training, some of that's internal. But we also have areas like emergency plans. We have like 3 big emergency plans, but below that we have numerous annexes and appendices, and some of them are quite niche. The role of these teams' job is to make sure that they align nationally and regionally and locally. So it's constantly finish one bit of the bridge, you can start
starting again.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's like constant development. There's business continuity. We have 120 odd business continuity plans. About 80-90% of those are up to date, and regularly review about 10 or 20 that need refreshing. The plans are all there. Just needs renewal. And then we have quite a bit of work on community resilience. So that's preparing our communities, our faith groups, our charities, etc. So there, I think we do quite a bit of work with faith groups. We have the 30 emergency rest centres. Donny and Rob's team does quite a bit of work. Again, quite a good number, quite a decent number. And we're always looking out for other organisations to work with. Rob, can I for this?
No, I mean, I think just around the emergency plans, just to say that they're not just plucked out of the air, they're based on, there's a national risk assessment done that is then assessed by London Resilience for what the risks are for London, and then we localise that into what the risks are for the borough. And that really leads on to how I prioritise what our emergency plans are, judged against those risks and those priority risks for the borough, to make sure that all of those areas are covered. And that's reviewed annually for any risks that might be being foreseen in the future as well.
And I think it's true to say we're only as good as our last sort of emergency. And it's all very well to have all these plans, but what you're doing is constantly exercising, constantly updating, constantly improving. And that's the key, isn't it? Always to be saying, what have we missed? What can we improve? How can we do things better? Are there any questions? Can I just say, I just thought it was really thorough, well-written report, and it certainly gives me assurance that we're on the right track. Kim?
Yeah, this is a brilliant report. Makes me very proud to read this. I suppose I only have 2 points. One is a question. Obviously, we've been set a challenge about being the best. I just wondered if it's this, how we would benchmark that as far as what we're doing in terms of resilience. I also, the other point, which I read with a smile, is obviously when I read through all the public safety, fire incidents and everything else, there's one which is missing. And that's the fire we had at Chelsea Town Hall that closed the registry office.
Yes.
And I just want to, again, commend the staff that we had there, who just completely got the thing going. They moved the wedding up. They had 15 weddings on that day, and were able to deal with that without a fuss and very professionally. And I think credit to them and credit to your team. So thank you.
Josh,
thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for those, Andrew. Just questioning on incidents in the last year. Obviously, you probably know what I'm going to say. 8.1. Compared to the 2 previous years, we've seen a double incidents from those who may not see the report. 38 in 2022, 37 in 2023, but last year we had 61. What is that? Are we just reporting it differently, or are there generally more incidents, or what's the?
So for a number of factors. So we're proactive now. Team is and we are, and the organisation obviously is. So we tend to kind of, as well as receiving phone calls from the control rooms, we tend to prevent as well when we hear about things. The team's very good at that. We're getting a lot more issues coming to us. Getting local maintenance issues, things not being repaired, lifts. You have your stories, but I guess when I'm on call, I get lifts broken, systems not working, or boilers not working, and creating issues for blocks and flats and properties. So a lot more incidents we're getting. And we've balanced that all the preparatory strategic work we have to do, like keeping the 15 plans up to date, whilst also having 16 incidents being worked. And some of them are quite serious. Yeah, so that's our question.
Patrick.
Thank you. Yesterday I was at the local Safeguarding Partnership Board, and we were discussing the really alarming increase in incidents of threats to schools, about whether, from using a bomb or going to go and attack children, particularly in Kensington and Westminster. And I know during the board we had our police partners there, and they were very reassuring that they were absolutely on this and they had a procedure to put in place. But I just wondered, when you were talking about preparing communities, that if you're ever actually having that conversation, I mean, it's a very difficult conversation, but how are we, from the council perspective, preparing our schools and communities for incidents like this?
Yeah, I mean, and we are very involved with the schools as well. So when those threats do come in, it's part of our response and our linking with the emergency services. And certainly, prior to coming in around those bomb threats and evacuation times and lockdowns, etc., it can be very confusing with the schools how to enact that.
Yeah.
But we are tied in and linked, and we do link them into other advising agents, not just the police. But as counter-terrorism agents as well, to actually provide them with the support that they need, and that is continuing.
Oh, Johnny?
Yeah, so thank you for the report, and obviously we know how important this is given we had Brentford in our borough. I guess my question kind of builds on what Kim was saying, but we obviously have a duty to be the best in this space given that history. So is there anything that you think we might want to consider in the future to enhance the resilience function even more, whether that's political support, resource, and how can we help ensure that we have the best possible response to future incidents? And then whether there are, just at 5.4, you talk about the external report, and whether there's anything you can share about what they've kind of fed back to us. I know it talks about the end of April, but maybe we've got a bit of an idea, and anything that you think is worth flagging.
Shall I start with the external report? So the resilience review, it's completed, sent to us last week, and I've circulated it to officers internally. And we will start to produce we'll publish that report around the summertime, hopefully, to this group, and we'll put a response together and an action plan. The report was a fair report. It's broadly positive. It suggests some improvements from the emergency plans, some more operations type stuff like I think scenarios or exercises. But overall, the report's quite positive. But yeah, summertime is that one. Second bit.
Yeah, I mean, and the support's been great for what we've been trying to achieve and what we intend to achieve as we move forward. And I think about us trying to achieve to be the best. I think what we lead in is the fact that our response is much more streamlined now, and it's much more coordinated and organised. And if I compare that to other boroughs, you know, we know where the first calls are coming into the resilience team, and then how that actual response from gold all the way down to the laydown that goes on scene is coordinated and managed. And I think that's a much clearer process than I've seen in other areas.
Can I go to the tactical laydown, which is introduced to your idea? But since Edward's Day is one member of our resilience team, myself included, we will go to the incident scene day or night and act as the silver on scene and help coordinate press centre, hotel, or the incident itself. So a professional member of the resilience team will do that now, irrespective of the 257 the most staff that we on the road. So he will get there as well, but we will get there first. We'll try to best efforts.
Good. Are there any other questions? I think the fact that there aren't any other questions shows you how absolutely comprehensive your report has been. And thank you very much for the assurance it gives us. Please agree all agree the recommendations in paragraph 2. And Ness, Mary, do you have any other comments? Oh, no, thank you. Then we all agree.
Agree.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next thing, which is the Fairer Kensington Chelsea Action Plan to tackle inequality, celebrate diversity, and promote inclusion. Sarah, do you want to introduce this?
I thought Mandeep was possibly going to come up as well because she's done so much work on this annually, but they can stay there if they want. Thank you, Jo. This plan supports one of our core ambitions, the council plan to be a fairer borough by tackling inequalities, and as a key action within the council plan action plan. It sets out how the council meets its obligation under the Equality Act and is part of our response to the Grenfell Inquiry report. Officers have worked extensively with the community, with residents, with partners, with staff over the last 18 months. And I would really like to thank them for everything they've done. They've done a huge amount of work on this. And I think the action plan clearly lays out what the feedback we had from the residents and everyone else. And so I hope that you'll be able to endorse them and support delivery over the next few years.
I thought it was really interesting that, you know, if you look at paragraph 4.1 about how the Fairer Action Plan is really built on the foundations of our current equality, diversity and inclusion strategy. And what we're really saying is a really good foundation, but the challenge we've had from residents is how we take it up a notch and how we actually have a greater focus on where we do have inequality and the scale of that inequality, and where we get the information about different perspectives, needs and backgrounds, and especially those who live on our estates, and especially those people who have diverse ethnic backgrounds, and also people who live with disabilities. So I think it's been really good that this plan has been informed by absolute robust evidence. And what we're looking into is really, we know we're doing a lot, but what are the additional steps? This is about additionality. What else can we do to try and address inequality and the gaps in the services that we find? And it can't just be us on our own, it's got to be in conjunction with wider partners. So I really recommend this report. I think done a fantastic job. The consultation's been absolutely extraordinary. So it's been on data and evidence. But if you look at paragraph 5, you've got, you know, 1,000 people engaging. That's an awful lot. And they told us about their lived experience, and we've had citizens panel and 70 people on that. Then we've had all the data inputted. Then we've gone back to everyone and said, okay, what do you think? This is where we're at. Do you think we've spotted the gaps? Is this what we should be doing? And then we've gone out to consult again. So I don't think we could possibly have done a more thorough consultation. And I think this balance between the data and the hard evidence, and then the qualitative stuff that people have told us based on our really strong foundations, means that this is an action plan that we hope we can actually do something with, and actually has concrete things for us to address, rather than just being wishing. It's not wishing at all. So I think it's great. So I don't know if any other questions.
I don't know whether Joe wants to add.
Joe, do you want to come in? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted, what more can we do? And I just wanted to highlight page 64, Action 1, new programme of bursaries. And this is something which we're working on at the moment, Alan and his team, in terms of how we can have a coordinated approach in terms of getting people into further education and supporting them into apprenticeships financially as well. And we're working on and how that would then be delivered. And we're focusing on using some of the really good organisations to do this inventory, rather than it being council driven. But just to say that that's something which particularly excites me, and I think it will be very good as far as our young people, particularly young people with social events.
Soft.
Just very quickly, I'm very pleased that you're reviewing the LIFT data, low income family tracker, because I know that in housing we use it a lot, particularly for our tenancy support fund, so we can better target those that need it. So I'd be interested to see a review when that comes out. Thank you.
A gentleman and Johnny.
Thank you. That's a really small point. And these EQIs pop up in every paper, and I've never really had a lot of them ask, but this is probably the most appropriate one. On page 81, we have the age breakdown, and it's sort of a personal gripe really, but each age bracket is slightly different than the other age brackets around it. So it's helpful to know 21% between 35 and 14 for 14 years, whereas 25 to 34 is 70%, but it's 9 years. So it's would just be nice if it sort of equal weighted. That's all, just to actually get a better understanding of where the people are.
I'll double check that, and that may be census category.
I assumed it was.
I think it is.
It's slightly unhelpful census category.
But just to say, we are looking in the round of this action plan at the equality impact assessment that we do, making sure it's sufficiently kind of targeted, has the right information, because I think sometimes we could be more targeted when we ask the questions about the equality's impact of a particular policy strategy, and so we've got an audit to a piece of work for us to check that we're asking the right questions and making the most of the data that we just add to Councillor McVeigh's point, I think the work they do in housing to use LIFT to sort of target interventions and indeed to get ahead of things like registered arrears is a model for the way we could use some of that data more proactively right across the council. So I think that's what we want to do through that work.
Thank you. Johnny and then Emma.
Well, I think this is really good. It's great to see so many, all 450 have consulted and 350 responses at events. I just wanted to welcome a couple of things in particular. So in Action 2, direct cash support, which we've obviously experimented with in previous years to deal with the cost of living. We've seen that's had a really good impact. So I'm happy that we intend to continue using the household support fund to alleviate some of those pressures. And also Action 10, more youth council involvement. I know lots of colleagues have, and I have too. We've met some of the youth councillors. They're great. And the more we can hear from a diverse range of voices when we set policy, the better. So I really hope that we can continue that work and strengthen those relationships.
Great. Emma.
Yes, I agree. This is, there's a huge amount of work done, and you've done so much work in thank you. First, just I agree with accuracy of data is kind of really, really important. I suppose this is almost a philosophical question. I think, in this paper, you've tried to address all the things that we can do, but I think the question, I've asked you this before, is that there's a big issue around health and health inequalities, and the fact people live much longer in one part longer, but we can't fix all problems, and I wish we could, but we can't. And I think you probably have sort of addressed that, but I do sometimes worry that we're trying to fix problems over which we have no control, and particularly those around health. And as I said, I think you've tried to address the things you can, but I wonder sometimes whether we could stress more that there are things we don't. It's about managing expectation about what we can really do, because you talk about that challenge, but obviously you don't really, if you can't stress it.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Will. I think that does echo some of the feedback we had through the consultation, where people really asked us to be specific about what we could do and the difference that we could make. And so that's where we've tried to focus the action. I think there is a much broader question about how the council works with its partners, and particularly with health partners through the delivery of the health and wellbeing strategy and some of those other kind of key pillars of the work that we do to alleviate those inequalities. I'm pleased that we've got kind of good support from public health with this plan, so some of those links with health provision and the NHS services will be made, but I completely agree. I think we wanted to focus on what we could do, but that doesn't mean there isn't a wider landscape which government, health and other partners have an important contribution to it.
And I think the funding that Teams is doing with public health, where we're trying to pilot some, tackling different issues that have come up health-wise, it's going to be very interesting to see whether we really can move that down on some of those health inequalities.
Yes, and quite often when we think of health inequalities, we always immediately think, oh, well, whether it's, how long, longevity, etc. But in this paper, when you're talking about health inequalities, you're also talking about mental health and how we help wrap services around people, whether it's, people with disabilities or other people, right? And that's why it's very good that we've got these. To Emma's point, I think it's very helpful that we've actually got these action points, what we will do and how we will show progress. We really ought to be able to do something.
And some of the focus on the data and the lived experience of people, I think, helps us make that case strongly to our partners. So where we can identify specific barriers between what are relatively high levels of skills and education in the borough, but sometimes quite poor employment and outcomes, we can kind of make the case that, for example, mental health is part of that picture.
Yes.
More effectively.
I just to agree with Kim and say it's great to see so much about employment and employability in this paper, 3 separate points, so I really welcome that. Actually, it was a good follow-on from what you were just saying. So you say provide regular, you said needed feedback in response to the consultation, but are you actually going to have sort of metrics or RAG ratings? We're talking about data where you're actually going to map if we have shifted on any of these things.
Yeah.
And will it come back to us to see what it is that you've listed or how you're going to be measuring that?
Thanks, Councillor Paul. So subject to conversations with Councillor Wheel and the Open Scrutiny Committee, I think we're looking at least 6 monthly reporting to the committee about kind of progress. I think that's both progress on delivery of the actions, but also where we can, I think looking at some of those wider metrics to look at what's changing, bearing in mind Councillor Will's point that not all of it is within our direct gift, but looking at what we can about those wider indicators. And I think we're also proposing to bring some of the headlines from this into our kind of annual report on broader council performance to show the progress against the actions and the difference hopefully that the plan has made.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. How are we going to kind of comms or communicate our successes here? Because obviously not everyone follows capital communications. I mean, we're just another local priority amongst many. But one of the things I picked up was Action 7, which was use the World Health Organization's framework for age-friendly communities. Now that's got very excited. Zara, I think OPD's forum, they're really keen on this, and obviously we met with her, and she emailed a few times really encouraging that. But how do we kind of feed back to organisations such as that obviously it's an aim, but how will we achieve those aims, I think, and kind of trickle it down amongst the community?
Thanks, Councillor. And I've just actually had a conversation with Mandeep and Holly about how we follow up if the plan is agreed tonight, both with kind of with community more broadly, but also specifically with some of the people involved in those in developing the plan who were very involved in consultation. I think in quite a lot of the actions there is specific space left for engagement and to some extent some co-design in taking forward these actions. And also I think in agreeing to your point what good looks like in some of these areas and where we're trying to get. So we will be kind of doing some wider communications about the new plan and the commitments and some information about when people can expect to see progress and in what form. But I think specifically we'll also be following up with everybody who participated in the consultation to let them know where we've got to. As Councillor Gannon said, we've been through quite a process with this, so we've tested this at various stages. So this shouldn't come as a surprise, but I think we've strengthened some of the elements in ways that reflect the feedback from the most recent placements.
I think one thing that we do need to look at is the fact that, almost half the people were over 60. Yes, that's how we managed to, and I know you said that we go to the youth council and like that, but to have 47% over 60, we need to be able to engage better. Yes. Are there any other comments or questions? Mary, anything for you?
If I just mention 2 points. One is the one that Joe kindly mentioned, that we talked about a lot about data and about how important it is to have very timely data. Because sometimes we're a bit slow at producing figures and then acting on it and flexing our responses. So, for example, if we want 400 new members of the health club or sports club, then if we have only got one new one after 6 months, we need to change what we're doing. We need to use that information to inform our activity. And the other issue that we raised was the non-targeted services that we provide across the borough, like street sweeping. Are we doing that fairly across the borough? Are we convinced that not only the resource that goes in, but the outcomes are fair across the borough? Because they may not seem like they directly fit into this, but they do affect how people feel about their environment. Yes. And are we getting as clean streets in Ladbroke Grove as we are in Sloane Street, for example? And should the action plan, pay attention to that and have cognizance of it? Those are the 2 points, I suppose, that we need to.
So much more Jeremy to respond to that. Are we equal? Do we have?
I don't think we are. I think it's a really good point. In fact, Scott was mentioning it earlier that coming home to London, I was really disappointed in Ladbroke Grove. So there is a we do have to be conscious of it. And I think also we've seen an awful lot of NSIL funding in wards that have had development, which we need to balance out internally. So it's something we are looking at. And it's a really, really good point. Outcome, not.
Okay. Great. Well, then will the leadership team agree the recommendation to endorse the Borough Action Plan and to support the delivery of the plan until it's fully agreed? Yes, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. So item 6, the outcome of the Development Project Fund. Okay. So
So I hope you've had the chance to read this paper because I think it's a really good paper. It clearly sets out the process, the voting, and how we came to the awards, or hopefully the awards we're going to agree tonight. But I think it really shows how co-designing this with the panel, with the residents, what a good outcome this has been. So I'm really pleased with the outcome. And thank you to Moira and the team. I don't know whether you want to add anything.
I just wanted to highlight the fact that the process that we got to with round 4 is through learning from rounds 1 and rounds 2 and 3 and what went wrong there, and working more closely with residents, the resident panel, which represents the 7 wards in the north of the borough. And we got to a place where when we went to the public vote, when we shortlisted, there was a lot less, I would say, pushback from the community because it was a very open and transparent and robust process. And even with the awards that have been published through when we went to scrutiny, we have had really good feedback from the community. And also as part of the process, it's not just about awarding to those who had the most votes, but also supporting those who didn't receive any funding and how they can access other funding available. With regards to the public vote, we did actually receive 1,453 votes, but we were able to discount a significant number, unfortunately, but that was because they weren't eligible to vote for the Grenfell Projects Fund. And we had a really robust way of checking their IP addresses. So there was a really good process afterwards just to make sure that the votes were eligible votes. And as you can see in the report, over 10,000 votes were cast from those 1,000 that were eligible to vote.
yes, good. Johnny?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to hear how many people actually voted. I still remember going to the first Project Fund Day of 2019, so it's really nice to see that it's still going and so many good outcomes. I was just going to ask if you could say a bit more about the resident panel. Is it kind of genuinely representative? How confident can we be about that? Is it accepted, generally speaking, by the community? Because obviously with any kind of decision where there are potentially winners and people who maybe don't get funded, there's a challenge there, isn't there?
Yes. So it's representative as in that for the 7 wards, there is a representative for the 7 wards. I wouldn't say in terms of diversity or age or anything like that it's representative, because it is a small number of residents, so it can't by its nature be representative. With regards to community reaction and acceptance of the board, I would say there have been some questions about the makeup of the board, but not to the extent that we feel that they have been discredited. It's more so in the fact that those organisations that were shortlisted for the vote and those who were excluded from that shortlist did question who the resident panel is. But because it was very clear what the criteria was to take organisations through the vote, that we had less pushback than we might have had on this.
Kim?
Yeah, two things. So I see obviously you've got next steps, paragraph 8, monitoring. I just wondered if you could just expand a bit on ongoing evaluation as far as the project's concerned. And obviously a lot of these project awards are 2 years. So the basis of the funding, does it quarterly or whether you're into relationship on the monitoring?
We will be monitoring them every 6 months. We do visits. Previously, we had asked for information from the organisation. So we will be undertaking visits. Some of the residents panel will also be supporting us on the visits to actually see the projects in action. And if there are any issues around performance and delivery, we will support them through that to ensure that they're back on track. But we're very much in a place where we don't want to, as we had experienced with previous rounds, be in a place where we have some organisations that actually don't start their projects for an extended period of time. So we're going to be providing support alongside that monitoring to ensure that delivery is on track and within the time frame under which they applied for funding.
I'll just ask Mary, anything from you? Okay. Camille, you wish to ask a question?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd just like to say that, yes, it's true that a lot of the other projects in the previous years that were awarded never produced anything. I mean, people received thousands of pounds for creating a website, for instance. It never materialized. So if you start at suboptimal and then make a bit of progress, that still isn't really good enough. And the response from the community, and not just anecdotal evidence, is not as positive a rosy a picture as has been painted, unfortunately. And also there are various projects that have been awarded quite large sums of money on this round and previously, and where you find that it's the same person who's the director of several different organizations. So they're actually bidding under different organization names, but it's the same people who are the directors of these charities or CICs. Also, where there has been an abuse of power of using your leverage as, for instance, a representative of, let's say, an organization, which is then set up a separate CIC, bidding for this money, as well as using their leverage and their position within different steering groups or whatever to access other resources. And what you see is cumulatively where organizations are essentially getting, one is over £185,000. So I think that, you know, there are a lot of questions over what's happened with this Grenfell Projects Fund, and I'm very prepared to write to you, the leadership and the team, with a direct breakdown of what these organizations are, what they've actually provided, and how much they've received this time and previously, and where there's duplication of individuals who are directors of different organizations. So the feedback that I'm here to give you is it ain't what it looks like at all.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you for coming this evening to make that point. Maura, do you wish to respond? I suppose Camille's really making 2 points. One, are we sure that, you know, because we do say that over 100 organisations have contributed, are we sure that what they've contributed is, you know, up to snuff? We've given them money. Have they delivered against what we thought they'd deliver? That was the first question. And then the second question that Camille brought up, are we sure that people aren't all interconnected and that very few people are benefiting, although on the surface of it, it looks like that many organisations have done. So have we done our due diligence properly is really the question.
For this round, we have done our due diligence.
Right.
And that's part of the learning from the previous round. So when I mentioned the previous round, we were very much aware that there were some issues that we needed to address, and so we've tried to address those with this round. We did our due diligence. If there are instances, as you can see from the list of 15 organizations where you believe that there are directors in common, it would be very helpful to get that information, and we can really look at that. In terms of monitoring the previous rounds of Grenfell Projects Funds, as I said, it didn't necessarily work as well as we had hoped it would. What you've said is absolutely true. There are some organizations I mentioned that they didn't even start their projects, so we're aware of that. And so that's why we're offering that support from the start to make sure that those projects that we're funding for round 4 are as robust as possible and are delivering against what they said they're going to deliver to it.
Can I just mention one other thing? Sorry, I forgot to mention that one of the organizations that has been awarded a considerable sum of money, apparently their application was lost, and so they didn't actually even go through the normal procedure, and it was just added at the end and kind of wait for it.
Okay. You probably don't want to mention the organisation in public. Perhaps Maura can follow up with you afterwards. But as I said, thank you. I think it raised justifiable concerns, and as you said, they are justifiable. But when this this instance, this round, we feel that we've learned from mistakes that we've made in the past. Yeah, but otherwise, could you take up something separately? Thank you. Notwithstanding that, do we agree the recommendations in paragraph 2?
Yes,
Yes, we agree. Thank you. Thank you. The next item on the agenda are options for vacant rental acquired properties. Can I just mention right at the start that there is an exempt Part B Appendix A, which we have all looked at, but we will not be discussing what's in that appendix in public. We've all seen it, we've all agreed, know what it is, but it is in Part B. Thank you. So, thank you.
So we've got Dan here who can talk about it more. But I just want to remind everybody the terrible background, obviously, to this that's in front of us today. It follows the fire, and we faced a very, very difficult situation of rehousing a large number of households very, very quickly. And we also wanted to offer choice to the people about where they wanted to live. So this meant that we purchased 290 homes in a very, very short period of time. And we went about a very difficult task in the best way possible. We prioritised getting the properties into council ownership as quickly as possible. And then we implemented a work programme to get these properties up to the high standard we expected. And in a few cases, we found that the properties were unsuitable. And either the work was not possible due to freehold issues or structural issues, or just it was just not possible to do the works. And so out of the 290 homes, we're talking about just 14 properties here. And so this paper in section 5, it lays out the ring-fenced options for the proceeds of its sale, because we have come to the conclusion that we need to sell these properties. And this is what this paper is about. And the options talk about buying replacement homes for our council tenants, investing in existing council homes, potentially also looking to use some of the money in our new homes programme so we can build new council homes, continue to build new council homes. And another option is to support the maintenance of existing homes for bereaved residents and former residents of Grenfell Town, Grenfell Walk. So I will hand over to Dan, but I really welcome all your views on this.
But before we hand over to Dan, I think Kim wanted to come in.
Well, I'm really just to expand, I think, on what Sof has said. I think it's important, it's quite a blunt paper in some respects, to remember that with Grenfell Tower, we lost 2% of our housing stock. And people were in hotels, which is not a place where people want to be. And what we wanted to do at the time was to acquire a lot more than we required. It was never, ever going to be the case that you could replace somebody's home that was lost, particularly at Grenfell, because they were lovely homes. So we did that in terms of 300. And I think it's complete to highlight that there's actually one block and 7 homes that we've got. And this wasn't because of, I think, to do with mistakes being made, so much mistakes being made, although I think some of them with the benefit of hindsight and more detailed surveys were that. It also included problems that we came up against where we were buying leaseholds, which required landlord permission for us to actually make changes to bring them up to the standard in terms of, principally it was all to do with fire and safety that we were doing so. So I really, what I'm saying, this is quite a blunt document. That there is a recommendation here for us to resell and reinvest the money, and it's rather similar to some of our general housing, which I know, Sof, you're working on at the moment. Whereby, at the moment, when you take into account the cost of refurbishing and building on some of us, there will be some of our homes which are better to be sold and then reinvested when dealt with. So that's really what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Dan, do you want to come in?
Not much to add or anything, no, beyond what councillors said.
Does anyone else want to comment?
I just want to also mention that Dan, I don't know if you want to talk a bit more about the consultation involved in this and.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been this has been something we've been thinking about and considering for a while, and been in dialogue with grievance targets and to just make sure they understood both the kind of the principle of the decision of the disposal and why, as you've already described, but also to reiterate the commitment, because as the report said, it's a historical commitment that if these homes were sold, the proceeds of those sales would be kind of recycled back into investment in affordable housing. So that's what's discussed too. And the approach that we're taking has been accepted and understood. I mean, disposing of a social rented home is always a last resort, if you see what I mean, because every home is precious. But I think there's widespread acceptance that it's not appropriate to retain these homes either for the purposes they were bought for or for any other social letting. But therefore, this is the right decision to take in these cases.
Okay. Mary, anything from you?
No, nothing from me.
Oh, Kimia, you have.
Yes, sorry. That's why I'm here tonight, these two issues. So about this, as you know, there's been some press coverage. The point is, can we expect some transparency around what was purchased and for how much? You just talk about 14 properties. Now, this is public money, and whether there are mistakes were, human error, given the chaos and so on, and all of that is all well and good. But can we expect some transparency? Because a person that got paid without unquestionable check at the time is long gone with their money, and we need to know what the actual cost was at the time. What did the council pay for these properties that are no longer fit for purpose, and what the difference is between what was paid and what it will now be sold on for. So I think there's also wider questions about the entire procurement program at the time, because this is not just these 14 properties. We know blocks, at least 3 different blocks that were purchased for large amounts of money where there have been continuing problems and issues. They do have tenants in them at the moment, but there continue to be problems with these 3 blocks.
Let's separate 2 things out. Let's discuss your first point, which is pertinent to this paper. To your other point, I suggest you write to the chief exec and say exactly what your concerns are, and she can respond to you. But on the first point, which is really what you're saying, is that what we have in the exempt appendix you'd like to be made public. There must be a reason it's exempt appendix. I'm looking at our lawyer here, or my chief exec to explain.
What's possible? So in the exempt appendix, there is no, there isn't a great deal of valuation information in there.
No,
what there is, however, is some addresses of properties which survivor families have looked at, and which we felt was information that was best kept out of the public domain. The information that about the amounts that were properties purchased for, I believe, has been in the public domain through all of the work that's gone on with the audit and transparency, as well as all of the key decision reports that were taken at the time, which are very easily searchable these days. So
the information is in public and is searchable.
Yeah. So, and I think Camille is also asking about, the difference between what they'll be sold for. Of course, we don't yet know what the answer to that is. But what I think we can say, we've got the commitment of here, is the sales total from these properties will be publicly available information. And also we're making a commitment in this report to be very clear and public about what that, how much that money is and where we're going to invest it. I don't know, Mike, whether there's anything you want to add from a finance point of view, or you've covered it.
No, I mean, the reports that went to audit committee, I think 2 years ago now, have full details of the programme of buying that went on, what was spent, and that it was more they purchased more houses than were required for the reasons that Councillor laid out. Sorry.
Sorry, this is not, this is a bit of an obfuscation, if you don't mind me stating. We're not talking about the entire budget for the entire 290 houses and what the total amount was. I'm just saying, let's look at the specifics of these 14 properties. What was paid for these 14 properties, and when it's sold, what is coming back? I'm not talking about the entire programme and all the 300 houses and what the total amount was for the full 300 houses.
Thank you.
Specific, we want specifics, please, and there's a reason for it. Because we do believe this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a reason why we want to look at the
Sorry,
specifics.
Samir, just get to it. What you've come here tonight to say, you just want specifics of these 14 properties, what they were bought for, and when they're sold, will that information be made public?
Right, or you just take that away and take.
Yeah,
Take away?
I think we will be, I can't see that much of that will be commercially confidential. So I'm sure that we will be able to, but not within particularly short order, because it will obviously take a while for them to be sold.
Yes, but it will be public, is what you're saying when they are sold. I mean, the information will be available.
And we can obviously you're good right to anyway. So we can just we can be specific about exactly what information we'll be able to provide.
That's helpful. Thank you. If there are no further questions, can we agree the recommendations in paragraph 2? Agreed. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8 is about the information of implementation of future global support. And all that we're doing this evening is I'm asking your authority to amend the recommendation that we agreed in December, because actually we agreed to award a contract. What we meant to say was we agreed to award a grant. And it's very important that we have a grant with a contract, because the grant was ongoing scrutiny through the independent scrutiny function. So on that basis, can we please agree recommend? Thank you. And now we come to item 9, which is a meal offer to preschool meal children, pupils during May and the summer holidays, or half term and the summer holidays. I don't know. Yep.
Well, I just wanted to say that this is absolutely fantastic that we've still got this money, that the Government and Finance teams believe that it can come out of the household support fund to support our Easter and summer holiday preschool lunches. I wanted just to highlight this one sentence in 3.3: children and young people from families experiencing financial hardship are more likely to experience street poverty during the holidays. So it's really, really important that we're delivering these £4 a day per pupil for these families during the holidays, because I believe that's when they need it most. And I think we're the council that's been most generous in doing that. So I'm just delighted that that we're able to proceed at the moment to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just give you. Mary? Okay. Oh, thank you very much. And fully agree the recommendation that we will agree to accept the total funding, we'll approve the allocation and delegate the authority of operations presidents to do so. Yes, we agree. Thank you very much. And then we come to the council plan action plan. Item 10. Well, you remember in March 23, it doesn't seem that long ago, we published an ambitious council plan, and we said we want to be the best council for a borough which is going to be greener, safer and fairer. And now we're halfway through. We've made great progress despite actually an increasingly difficult financial backdrop, but we have done it against that. And there are all sorts of things that we've done. I'm not going to go through everything because we may be here all night otherwise. But since 2023, I'd just like to highlight a few things. We've launched London's leading cost of living support. We've just mentioned what we've done with preschool meals and holidays, which we're going to continue. We've had grants for the poorest households. We've delivered on our Amazing Spaces programme. We've delivered Buttes Free, Hollywood Road, Chelsea Green. We've cracked down on dirty streets. with brand new street enforcement teams, with expanded waste collections, with a graffiti service, which is removing over 1,000 items of graffiti every month, which is all good and great. But now we need to really think about what we want to achieve over the next 2 years, and we need to focus on what will make the biggest difference. And you can see that in this, we're sort of thinking about doubling down on our basics and protecting the services that our residents tell us that they really care about, so that we will have the cleaner streets in London, so we will maintain our twice weekly bin collections, and we will deliver really a first-class public realm. And I think bottom line, that means that we'll be there for people when they need us the most, focusing on decent homes, as often said, in our role as a caring and competent landlord, providing the best services for children and for vulnerable adults. And running through all of this is what we want to be, this organisation to be. And I think we'll all agree we want to be lean and efficient. We will continue, and because we want to be prudent with residents' money, and we are unashamedly ambitious for our residents and our businesses. And the final thing I'm going to say to wrap is to say this organisation delivers on the commitments that we make. And these 30 actions are going to be promises that we will keep over the next few years. And now the onus is on all of us to make sure that we actually do that. That this is a slimmed down action plan. And I don't know whether anyone has anything to add, or Joe, whether you want to.
I just thank you for mentioning decent homes and stuff. I looked through all the action points, and I'm very, very pleased to see that out of the 30, 9 are specifically related to housing, and then a further 9 are also part of housing and how we deliver services, embedding the learning from Grenfell, resetting the tenant landlord relationship, listening to people and acting on what we hear. So I really like how clearly they're all set out. So thank you, Joe and the team who've done this. I think it enables all departments to really focus and actually say, okay, so we've had this excellent council plan focusing on being a safer, fairer, and we've achieved an awful lot. What else can we achieve? Exactly. And so thank you. I think it's going to really focus everybody's minds. So thank you for this.
Josh?
Yeah, I'd just like to flag, thank you, Joe, and thank you for all this work. I agree with Soph. I think having it in a really clear and ambitious way, but also easy identifiable is really good. I just want to point out, thanks to your work, Joe, and thanks to Gareth who's here as well, just talking about our excellent adult care service, social care services, but going above and beyond, especially with Loughborough, Kingsbridge, and St Helens as well, because that's something that you were saying, Elizabeth, about we hear from residents and we deliver. So we've heard this the past few years, and we're really getting on this. I'm really pleased to see this is in our fairer deliverable plan, and we can progress with it as quickly as possible as well. So just like to thank all the advocates for that and all the lobbying we've received. Anything about that to work with the community in order to do that, and I'd just like to just pass on my thanks for that.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to highlight the 2 particular things that I think are really fantastic for children's services in here. One is our new local youth grant offer, which has just started, which is about strengthening our partnerships. And as we always say, how we work with our partners is so vital. So helping more children access different services to be more inclusive for our children. So I think that's very exciting to see how it's going to go. But also feeding into that is the inclusion strategy, so number 23. And of course, one of the things that's most concerning to us is suspensions and exclusions, or children not accessing the excellent education that we have, that's provided to this borough. And so I'm really glad that we've got to focus on that. We're doing a lot of further work at the moment to have a deep dive. And I absolutely agree that increased attendance is the key. If children aren't attending school, then further down the line, they're going to get into trouble. And we have proof to look at that. So I'm really glad this has been highlighted as one of our priorities to look at. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just going to, like you, I think we've achieved a lot over the past couple of years, and we've talked about the possible work, the amazing spaces and so on. I really welcome in this paper that we're paring down some of the priorities that we've set ourselves, and we're being really practical about what's deliverable over a finite period of time with finite resource. I think that level of focus will help us. Lots of the things in here are kind of direct in terms of how they're being delivered. But I wanted to flag a couple of the enabling kind of priorities that I think sit in there, so digital innovation and CRM, as examples of things that will of course have direct benefits too, but will unlock a lot quicker progress for both kind of people in the town hall when they try to manage services, but more importantly for residents trying to access our services. We want to, as much as we want to get the basics right, we also want to do less and make it easy for people to get in touch with the council. And hopefully those are a couple of really practical areas where we can see real progress over the next couple of years.
Mary?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Can we agree the attached council plan action plan and to replace the previous one with this one? A real focus on
Agreed, yes.
Thank you very much. And the final paper this evening is an additional paper which is talks about the work at the North Side Garages, Pembroke Road, the outcome of the building condition survey.
Yes, I mean, thank you, Elizabeth. This paper kind of pretty much covers 3 league members' folios. So we have obviously the waste depot under GEM, we have the kind of property under, and then we have the housing, because also on top of the waste depot is housing. So it's been a huge priority for us to get this right, and this is why we're bringing this here tonight. And we fully acknowledge this has taken longer than any of us would like. But it's a very large, complex issue. As I said, it already covers 3 different folios and all the different moving parts involved. But the important thing is we have a plan and we're pressing ahead with it. And as the paper clearly states out, it is absolutely our intention to do the remediation of this building, subject to the REMA survey, which is coming very soon.
When is it coming?
In the summer. I mean, so we are not that far away. May is just around the corner. And I suppose from a resident's point of view, I just really want to reassure everybody that the building is safe and that we're not going to do anything without consulting with them. I mean, Em and I have been at many meetings with residents over the last few months. And so it is always concerning when your housing is being discussed. So this is what we want to make sure we're bringing on with us.
Thank you. Well, I think it sets everything out in the paper, but does anyone else have any questions? It's something we've talked about a lot internally. Is there anything anyone wants to?
No, I think I just want to echo what Soph has said. And actually the reason why, even though we don't have all the answers, it's here, and why Soph is, spoken silently, is because, we recognise it's not just our important depot, these are people's homes. And so, we've got to make sure we continue to do this in the right order and think about that first. And that's what the paper said, that remediation is our preference. There are people living there.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I was just I can see that works really needed and that safety is the most important thing when we talk about people's homes. I guess I just wanted to flag that we talk I think it's 1.38 about the funding context. This is a stark reminder of some of the financial context in which we operate, the challenge that we're going to have to balance our budgets. So we need the commitments that we talked about tonight, and probably take away that we ought to talk about and come back over the coming months with a clearer picture of how we intend to fund this. So whether that's going to be capital reserves or whether it's going to be borrowing, that's something that it doesn't cover. And I realise there's a lot more work to do, but I think it's something that we need to pick up and do a bit more work on together.
Okay.
So just a late question actually, because obviously when you read the report, a lot of this is to do with reinforced concrete, deterioration of And obviously, you know, we're aware we've got issues with that, but Silchester as well. I just wondered if we have a general survey of buildings with reinforced concrete in this type of construction, just so we can have a long-term horizon, because obviously, you know, it does deteriorate and it will require remediation in due course.
Yeah, we've got a condition survey programme with all of our operational properties. I think housing have also done their own surveys of obviously all the housing property.
Yes.
And we did very specific surveys more recently when we had the RAC issue
Exactly.
nationally. So we're very conscious of the strength and safety issues around concrete. What I haven't got is in front of me right now is what we have where we've got issues. But we know that we've got a survey of this building, for example, where it's got concrete, it's got basement levels, and so we've done the same sort of survey here as we had done previously at Pembroke Road. So I think we know most of the main ones, but I can certainly check exactly where we are on them. What we haven't done is kind of life tested, you know, how long we think is left in life of the buildings. But what we know from the surveys we've done at Pembroke Depot is that if we to invest in the remediation and if we continue to invest in maintenance, there's no reason why we can't continue the life of this structure. And I think that's true of most of those concrete structures, unless they have failed. If you're able to repair them, you can maintain that state, unless there is something fundamentally structurally wrong, which we would find in survey, and we haven't found in the case of Pembroke Garage.
Thank you.
No other questions? No? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Can we just agree the recommendation to agree in principle, subject, the key is subject to the outcome of the agreement to design work in relation to fire safety and people modelling, and to see whether it's actually possible to do. It's a very good place to be as a marker. Okay, everyone happy to do that? Yes, agreed. And I don't believe there's any other business. So thank you very much. Meeting is closed.
Thank you.
Thanks.